Three things that I advise all my buyer clients to talk about when they're talking to a lender before we go out searching for a house. So, as I've covered in other videos, when you're getting ready to go buy a house, we need to know what your budget is, right? We need to know how much house we can afford. Because if I show you a Mercedes Benz, it's going to be really hard to get you into a Honda Civic. And the same thing goes with houses. If you're only pre-approved up to $750,000 and you start looking at $1.5 million houses, you are going to be severely disappointed when you look at these $750,000 houses. And the same goes, there's some things to talk to your lender about in that conversation, not just how much am I pre-approved up to. So I'm going to go over a few things here. And I think that this is really important because too many times buyers come to me and they don't know these items. So first off is, what is my comfortable budget? Now, this should be discussed before you actually go talk to the lender. What am I comfortable paying per month? So the lender might approve you up to $900,000, but you are comfortable with payments that put you in that $750,000 category. That's super important, right? Because you still want to live life. You still have trips to go on and kids' shoes to buy, and the car is going to need to get a new alternator and all the things that goes on in life, right? And only you know your budget, right? So know what you're comfortable spending per month. Go into that meeting with the lender with that in mind. Number two is closing costs. So what are closing costs? There's two types of closing costs in a transaction. You're going to have the closing costs that the escrow company has, and you're going to have closing costs with your lender. So the lender is going to have, they call them all kinds of different things, right? And that's where I, as an agent, like to help coach my clients in what the different costs are. But essentially, when you show up to the closing table, there's going to be escrow fees, there's going to be a down payment, and then your lender is going to have some closing costs. And those go towards everything like appraisal and documentation and everything else like that. That closing cost could be the difference between you being able to actually close the house or not, or spending every last dime to close the house is very problematic, because that's how the water heater goes out. So know what your closing costs are. Nowadays, as we sit here in February 2026, we're seeing a lot of deals get put together where sellers are paying for some of the closing costs. And closing costs can also include rate buy down. So if you're getting quotes from a lender and they're saying, okay, well, we could pre-approve you up to this amount and your monthly payment is going to be this amount, and that's at 5.75% interest rate, there's a good chance that those closing costs have some form of a rate buy down. And that kind of leads us into our third thing you need to be asking, which is, do I need to be asking for closing costs from the seller? So if you go to three different banks and two banks give you one interest rate and the third bank gives you a lower interest rate, there's a good chance that they're factoring in a rate buy down, which means that closing cost number might be going up so that they can buy your interest rate down. And they could be sliding that in there, not telling you about that, assuming that you or your real estate agent will be able to negotiate the closing costs or the rate buy down be paid by the seller. So let me give you an instance. We go out to buy a house and we write an offer for $600,000. The house is listed for $600,000, but we ask for $20,000 in closing costs to be paid by the seller. That offer actually looks like $580,000 to the seller, to their net, okay, what they're actually putting in their pocket. So it's important to know that what your quote is from the lender, what these numbers are, so that when we go to write an offer, we can write the appropriate offer. We get that $600,000 house under contract for $600,000, and then all of a sudden your rate is 6.2 instead of the 5.75 that they quoted you. Now your monthly payments might be higher. It's going to be a couple $100 higher. All of a sudden you can't afford that house, or you could afford it, but it's not comfortable, right? So those three things are really important. Know what your monthly payment, what your comfortable monthly payment is, know what your closing costs are, and know what those closing costs are assumed by the lender to be paid by. Is it going to be paid by you as the consumer or the buyer? Are they assuming that the seller is going to pay some of these things? Another really good one to ask, and I guess maybe that's me being assumptuous here, is what kind of loan are you offering me here? Is this a VA? Is this a jumbo? Is this a conventional? Is this a FHA? That's going to be important when you're writing the offer. We want to write the appropriate offer. And how long will it take you to close? Because a seller might be interested in accepting an offer with a 21-day close, and that could be the tipping point for them accepting your offer versus another offer. So let's wrap this up. When you go talk to a lender, ask questions. And it never hurts my feelings as an agent to have this conversation with you, not only before you go talk to the lender, but after you talk to the lender, so that you can go back and ask the lender, hey, you know what? I forgot to ask you how much closing costs are, or I forgot to. That way we're rock solid. We know exactly what we're looking for. We know everything to expect when we head down the road and we start writing offers. You got any questions? Don't hesitate to reach out. Drop me a line here. BK knows the way.